Alright, so this setup is pretty jank, but this is the setup that I'm going to run with while I'm on my move and doing stuff. Deal with it. I think it's pretty fun. Figure drawing foundations. Common beginner mistakes when people are drawing figures. They're starting with boxes and cylinders right off the bat. So like a lot of people, and including myself, we all say learn to draw boxes and learn to draw cylinders in perspective. And that's how you quickly and simply build out the figure. The human figure can just be created with something simple like this. By attaching two boxes together like so, you can kind of start to build out the torso. But doing this right off the bat is a little bit difficult. You want to be able to have a pose in mind or use gesture to build your pose before you start adding in the structure and putting out the boxes. What does that look like? A lot of figure drawing is going through a process. You want to start off with gesture using really simple flowing lines, and then you can start to build construction and then perspective, right? You want to have different phases as you build them, and as you improve and get better, these phases will come faster and you'll be able to kind of do a bunch of these phases together at the same time. So that's like the biggest idea, is that good figure drawing doesn't really have too much to do with anatomy. Anatomy helps, obviously. However, good figure drawing mainly comes from being able to build out the figure in a specific order. Gesture to proportions to structure to details, all of that in that kind of order. So what does that kind of look like? We'll have a gesture going like this. I'll start with the head. Try to find the placement of the neck, this line for the shoulders, getting the gesture going with the torso. And at the same time, I'm trying to measure out proportions, right? And then we have legs dropping down like so, legs dropping down like so. You can start to build out the different forms going through, and then I'm going through a second time trying to find these shapes using gesture and figure drawing properties to try to make appealing shapes and trying to focus on what kind of lines are the most important. Right, just focusing on putting together the right types of lines. And what do these right types of lines look like? I'm going to go over all of that. But you can see that in this first beginning phase, I started off with something simple with the gesture, the overall flow, and then I started adding in the proportions. I had the pelvis down here. I thought that was too low, so I moved it up. Trying to find out where the torso is, how far is the arm moving, right? I think this is a little bit far, so I'm going to slide it back. And because it's so rough, I can easily move things around in that kind of way. Like so. You want to think questions like how is this body moving? And where is the weight? What's the main curve? So in this case, we have a curve over here. We have the main curve of the torso moving this way. The hips are jutting out this way. And then we have this weight being pushed down on this foot. And then this foot is mainly for balance. And then, so we have this forward energy moving over this way that we want to keep track. So this is all stuff that is going on in your head before you begin to actually draw, right? And then once you actually start drawing, I have my notes over here. Once you actually start drawing, you want to start to draw and build around rhythm and force. Mike Matesi, great artist, my first drawing teacher, taught me how to draw gesture, and I still praise and teach his stuff all the time. So what does that mean? Every pose has this underlying rhythm. So instead of just thinking of everything in parts, this is such a beginner mistake that I see. They draw things in sections and parts, but there's no collection of the whole. There's no connection of this whole piece as a one single like object. So the way you want to think about it is that all of these parts are flowing and how do they all connect to each other. So if we take this, for example, and we drop it out, this torso has this bend like this. Sometimes people might want to combine or draw it separately, like, oh, the torso, I learned that the torso is an egg shape. I learned that the pelvis is a diaper or something. And they are building Legos rather than building a full figure. So you want to have the flow help inform the ideas. So how does the torso flow go? You have a bend over here, and then you have a bend over here. Now this is not for every single torso, obviously. This is just for this specific pose. You want to look for good, appealing shapes that have curves and straights and that have forward momentum to them. I have so many videos talking about like gesture and everything. So definitely look into that if you are interested in learning more, or if this is a little bit confusing. But I'm not going to go too deep into this. This is more of a holistic view mindset. So let's go back. We have another pose. Let's start over, and we can start talking from the beginning, because the point of gesture is to do a lot of them. So we have the starting gesture. And this time I'm going to basically kind of go like a step by step and try to stop where I feel like things are, it's like a phase is done. So when I had that chart where it was gesture, proportion, structure, GPS, oh my God, gesture, proportion, structure. What was the last one? Like design. So we have gesture, proportion, structure, design. We want to go down this checklist. Here, gesture is checked up. Gesture, this is enough for like a gesture. You can kind of go a little bit more in depth with gesture if you want to. Like in my case, I would probably try to do a little bit more and add in. But now I'm starting to add in more proportion and structure just innately to the gesture, right? Like I would probably have the gesture be a little bit more complete, like so, like this. But even what I had before was good enough. The proportions and structure phase, all of these kind of mesh together. GPS meshes together. Once you have your gesture down, or as your, I want to preface by saying that these are not independent in so much as you think. I'm saying we want to go through phases, obviously, but it's more like these are all being considered at the same time. You're just putting emphasis on a certain section more. So like in the beginning, you're mostly just focusing on the gesture and a little bit of proportion. And then you're adding in like a little bit of gesture, mostly proportion and with structure. And then you're kind of just like putting emphasis on each specific idea, right? But you should be considering all of them at once. If you're like beginner and it's hard for you to consider all of this at the same time, then definitely try to isolate a little bit more. But as you improve and get more used to drawing, then you can easily start to just do it all together at the same time. So we want to focus on proportions. Let's look at overall height, right? How long is the pelvis compared to the legs? I think just generally eyeballing it, it looks pretty good. And you will get better and better at this. It becomes like innate. It becomes an innate ability, because you're training your eyes and your hands to coordinate better and be like, okay, yeah, this feels right. This feels good. So after you have like the proportions generally figured out and your gesture kind of figured out, like I have this pose, the weight is being pushed down here with this leg up front, you want to start using the boxes now, right? We all love boxes and we all love cylinders. And the reason why we love boxes is because it gives us corners and angles. And corners are innately really good design. I love corners. I love using corners on the design. So let's look at adding in the structure now. So we have everything. We can start to go through and just kind of put in the structure base. But all of our structure, remember, we don't want our structure to have no gesture. We want our structure to have a little bit of gesture to them so that it still feels alive. And this comes from learning how to like manipulate boxes in 3D space. So always practice boxes, always practice contour lines, always practice like like playing with simple shapes and making sure that they look 3D. So we have this, the neck goes out. I want to put out the torso, and I'm going to kind of add in the corner. So right now here, instead of just having it flat, I'm immediately looking for where is the corner of this torso, and that immediately places it into perspective, like so. And then we can find out the abdomen area, and then we have drawing out the center lines, drawing out different guidelines to help me figure out and see things in perspective. The head looks a little bit small now, so I want to push it up slightly, maybe make it a little bit bigger, like so. And then here, I'm using my own methods of construction based off of, you know, like my inspirations, the artists that I look up to, that I trained under. So I'm building it out that way. And then even my construction, so here would be a cylinder, right? But I'm not going to just put a solid single cylinder. I'm going to add a little bit of curve to the cylinder so that it has a gesture to it. And the gesture is also informed by anatomy. So this is where like all of these like fundamentals start adding in and building in to create design. We're starting to move through structure and into the structure and design phase. So like a leg like this, I would put it straight here, design it with a curve here, right? And then put out a little bit of structure for this knee, anatomies coming in, and then we have the leg going down like this. And don't be afraid to be messy. I think I get, you know, comments here and there of like, oh, like, you know, you're drawing digitally, like how do you do this on pencil and paper? And I get so confused by such a question because like, what do you mean, how do you do something on pencil and paper where you're like, and what they're asking about is like, oh, like you draw like the thing and then you erase slightly, or you like lower the opacity and you draw over it. It's like, oh, if you need to, guess what? There's an eraser. Just use that and just go like that. You know, you can get like a bigger eraser and then just redraw over it again, right? It's the same thing. So, and the other idea too, like the other aspect of it is that this is sketchbook stuff. So for sketchbook stuff, you're not trying to, you know, be pretty anyway, right? When you see good sketchbook drawings, it's either like they're going in with the purpose of making like a final piece, or their fundamentals are strong enough to where their rough, ugly sketches look pretty good. Like that. So now we're kind of building out the structure and the design of everything, like so. There we go. The pelvis looks way pretty fat, so I'm going to definitely slim everything down, like so. I'm looking at it from like this angle, you know, so it's looking a little bit rough around the edges. Checklist. As you get into these phases, you want to always remember, does everything still flow? So let's look at the flow. We have a big gesture flowing over here for the torso. We have it goes into this, so it has this nice kind of back and forth flowy shape. And then it goes, we have a gesture here for the leg and a straight to have a nice balance of complex versus simple. We have the gesture dropping down here. We have this arm. For the arm gesture, you want to get the deltoid shoulder, and then kind of goes over here like this, and then it goes down like this. For this, straight, like that. So there is gesture flowing throughout the whole thing. You just want to make sure that we have it all tied together. Now, I mentioned that you want to add details, I mentioned that you want to keep anatomy in line, but details come last because it's the least important. The main thing is to have this beginner gesture phase that you saw in the very beginning of this, because everything needs to be built on top of that foundation. Once you're on the detail phase, that's when you can start adding in anatomy. And what I mean by that is not so much like the main anatomy where it's like you have the arm and you have like the general shape of a hand type deal, right? You have this like general shape. You want to have enough anatomy so that you can get to this like very simplified shape, but then you want to slowly be able to build out and add in the more secondary and tertiary shapes of the hand and start adding in all of the fun anatomy aspects, right? And start adding in the body and everything, all of that. So this stuff comes last. That's the least important. But if you have that strength, or if you have that fundamental down, then you are pretty much good to go with that. Learn from general to specific. Always go from big to small. Go from simple to complex. And we can just do one more for funsies. Let's write down what we're doing. GPSD. This is kind of like the main grouping, and then design is almost overall, right? So let's start off with, I start off with the head, and I just do something simple like this. Find out the angle of the neck, find the angle of the shoulders. I look for where the clavicle is, and I try to find a nice midline going raw all the way down to the bottom of the pelvis where the crotch is. And then from here, I'm like looking at proportions generally, trying to make sure that I have enough of a good angle on everything. Like so. Feels like it's a little low, but I'm gonna leave it for now, and if I need to fix it, I'll fix it later. Kind of thing. You don't have to worry about fixing every single thing that you need, because a lot of the times you need to recognize that you might just not have enough information to fix everything. You might need to be able to like see more in order to fully like know how to fix whatever the issue is that you're having. So for this leg, I just went very straight, having tapered lines so that there's still gesture and energy, adding a little bit of anatomy here and there, just the simple stuff. Trying to find the right angles for everything like this, keeping simple lines like so. Shoulder ball, just to find placements of things. And I would say that I'm still in the gesture phase right now. I'm still gesturing, even though I'm starting to add a little bit of form. The form isn't like true form, true structure. But right now I'm in gesture and proportion phase right now. Just trying to figure out proportions. You're always working on proportions. You're always trying to fix and figure out proportions. And then it's because I'm recording on my phone, that's why you're seeing like the camera go away every now and then. So I just need to click. Right now I'm just trying to fix proportions and try to find the placement of everything. I'm just using simple shapes to place everything. And then we have the head here, like so. And then now that I kind of have stuff figured out, I want to start to add in contour lines and start separating my forms into the next big form. So probably the secondary forms. Some of these I've already figured out, like so. And then I'm just putting more emphasis on trying to get all the shapes looking good. So now that we're at something like this, we can go into even more and more detail. But essentially, this is the whole vibe. So we're kind of moved past into the structure and design phase, and I can start to erase things if you have something like a putty eraser, something cool. As if you're drawing traditionally, if you're drawing digitally, then you don't need this, but like you can just roll it over. This is what I did at like in like figure drawing classes or figure drawing sessions. I would get a sketch in really quickly, and then lightly, not as much as this, but like lightly do like a quick roll and then go back through. So now that I have things figured out, I can easily put all of these pieces together and fix the anatomy. Like so. And so the main takeaway of this is to learn to draw and get comfortable with drawing in phases. Things don't need to look good right off the bat. They can all look, you're working on it, and things will improve the more you work on it. And you see, like, in my second pass, I've decided to shorten the leg more just so that it flows better. I think my hips are still too big, I think. But something like that. And you can see main gesture, second gesture, dives down, pointing this way. Have a little bit of structure involved, a little bit of anatomy involved. Trying to find like the placement of things. But yeah, so that's gesture. You want to have a good order. GPSD, gesture, proportion, structure, design, and you want to go down this list. But this list is not fully separated, right? There's no like, it's not like this. It's more like you're bouncing between them all, keeping them all in mind as you put down a pose. Before you even start this, you want to make sure that you consider the motion, the movement. Movement comes before all of this construction. Gesture comes before structure. Movement comes before construction. The construction of the forms need to support the motion of the figure, needs to support how all these things move. And then always go from big ideas down to smaller ideas, big gestures, rhythms, down to like anatomy, structure, all of that.